I'm waiting for it to. Okay, so now we are live.
Okay.
All right, so I am going to go check in the Facebook community, and I'm just going to let
Okay.
them know we're live. I give them a few minutes, like I said, to kind of catch up, um, and then we will get started. Okay, we had somebody that came on just early enough to make sure that you were really going to be here. I thought that was so cute.
Oh,
I
really?
was like, yeah, she's really going to be here.
What did they think? I was just gonna make it up.
I don't know. That's just a super fan. I love it. All right, so we are going to go get started. I want to thank everybody. Okay, so now we are live. Okay, so you can hear it. Hold on. All right, so I am going to go check in the Facebook community, and I'm just going to let them know we're live. I'll give them a few minutes, like I said, to kind of catch up. Yeah, see, that's me talking, and then we will get started. I'm trying to figure it out where I'm coming from, because I'm coming from two places.
I'm gonna put a cough drop in my mouth.
Okay. All right, so we are live. I got all the audio turned off, and we are good.
Okay.
Welcome to another Grow Global seminar. My name is Nikki Woods. I am your global visibility expert, and we're going to talk today. I'm passionate about just about everything I get involved in, but this one is really near and dear to my heart. We are going to talk about writing, but more importantly, what do you do after you write? I tell people all the time that sometimes the writing is kind of the easy part. Then it's like once you get it, what do you do with this great work of art that you have put together and the literature that you have compiled. So we are going to talk about that, and I am so pleased to have an expert. Not only is she a writer, she's a best-selling author, but she has, along with her writing partner, started a publishing company, so she can kind of talk to both sides of the fence. But I want to tell you a little bit about our special guest. Her name is Victoria Christopher Murray, and she says that she always knew that she was going to be an author, even as she was taking an unlikely path to that destination, as we sometimes do. She's a native of Queens, and she first left New York to attend Hampton University, where she majored in communication disorders. And then after graduating, she went to New York University, where she received her MBA, then spending 10 years in corporate America before she decided she was going to go ahead and test her entrepreneurial spirit. She opened a financial services agency where she managed the #1 division for 9 consecutive years. However, she never lost that dream to write, that passion to write, and when the bug hit her again in 1997, she answered the call. So her first published novel, Temptation, came out in 2000, and then Time Warner published that novel. She made numerous bestsellers lists with that one and remained on the Essence bestsellers list for 9 consecutive months. In 2001, Temptation was nominated for an NAACP Image Award in Outstanding Literature. Then in February 2014, Victoria received another nomination for an NAACP Image Award in Outstanding Literature for her novel Never Say Never. And from the bug hitting her in 1997 and her answering the call, she has over 1 million books in print. She is indeed one of the top African American contemporary authors in the country. And then, like I said earlier, in February of 2014, she and her writing twin, Rashonda Tate Billingsley, opened their very own boutique publishing company, Brown Girls Publishing. Hello, Victoria.
Hi, Nikki. How are you?
I'm
One
good.
of our brown girls.
Yeah, yes, I am a proud brown girl. Thank you very much. My novel, Easier Said Than Done, is published under Brown Girls Publishing. So yes, that's what I said. I have a passion for this, and I'm so glad that Victoria could join us as well. So let's talk about you. Tell me about answering that call after being in finance for so many years.
Well, I always knew that I was going to be a writer. I always wanted to be a writer. I always tell people that I published my very first masterpiece when I was just 7 years old. And the reason I know it was a masterpiece, Nikki, was because it was called Betty and the Witch, and I plagiarized all the masterpieces that was out there. It had a little girl in red. It had 3 pigs. It had 3 bears. It had 7 little people. It had a good witch. It had a bad witch, all thrown into one. But I was 7 in the 2nd grade, and the teacher recognized something in me, and the entire 2nd grade performed it as a play. And that really, I didn't know the word at that time, but that really inspired me. And so I knew from that point I was going to be a writer. I knew. I just didn't know how I was going to get there. And it wasn't until my husband kept saying to me every year, "You've got to do this. You know, if this is why you think you were put on this earth, you have to do this." And it took me so many years, but with his encouragement, he actually bought me a computer when we got married. It was an Apple IIe, and it was one of those huge computers. It would probably fill this whole room now, because he really just believed in my dream. And so in 1997, I just said, if I don't do this soon, I'm going to be in trouble, and wish that one day when I'm 80 years old, wish that I had. So once I wrote the first one, it just flowed out of me.
And I think like you, I mean, I started really early. My first book was about my hamster. And, you know, in our class, they even had like a book making class where they actually put the book together and they published it. But I don't think that I ever really thought through the process of writing. So when you decided, okay, I'm going to answer this call and I'm going to be a writer, where did you go to find out about the business or even the art of writing?
Well, I thought I was loaded. Let's talk about the art, because the art and the business are two different things.
Okay.
And so a lot of people don't know that. But I thought that I was loaded with talent. I had done so well in school because I could write from that second grade all the way through getting my MBA. One of the reasons that I was a top student was because I could write well. And so I thought I was just loaded with talent. So I did a lot of reading, still do. I read about 50 books a year. And I just thought that I had enough talent. So I just wrote my first book. I was very clear on it having to be edited and everything like that. I didn't know that there was a craft to it. So I just wrote that first book. In terms of the business, I had my MBA in marketing, and my husband had his MBA in finance. And so we didn't even think about taking my book to a publisher. We just figured we were smarter than everybody. We were going to publish it, have our own publishing company, make millions of dollars, keep all the money. So, because a lot of people self-published at first because they got rejected. I didn't get rejected from anywhere. I rejected the publishers. And then about 2 days after we self-published, I realized I did not want to be self-published, because that word self was just so big. So much of it was on us. And but I did sell 9,000 copies of my first novel, of my self-published novel. I sold 9,000 copies in 6 months. And there was no Facebook, no Twitter, no social media of any kind to get out there in 1997. But what I did was every weekend I was someplace. Every weekend I was someplace. And a lot of people think that they have to get out and go pay $1,500 to do this or $1,000 to do that. And it's nothing like that. Every weekend I was at a book club. In the summertime, every weekend I was at a street fair. I was always someplace. If I didn't have someplace to go, my husband and I would drive around to beauty salons, and I would just go in there and pass out postcards. It was a grassroots campaign. And I sold books like this because if you have a well-written book like you have, Nikki, once people read the book, they're going to tell other people about it. And so that's how I was able, I read the book called The Self-Publishing Guide. I think that's the one by Dan Poynter. And I read it from cover to cover, did everything he said in there. But I treated it as a business, and I treated it as my business, and I treated it as a marketing business. And I knew that even though I was self-published and I was in some Barnes and Nobles and I was on the shelf, I knew those books weren't going to move until I moved them myself. And I knew those books, I wasn't going to move 1,000 at a time. I knew I had to sell my book one book at a time.
And see, I think that's interesting because I think a lot of creative types don't approach it that way. And that's why so many of us, and I'll include myself in this, either get disillusioned with the business or they are scammed in the business. I mean, you hear about singers who don't, recognize the music business, or writers who don't recognize the business of writing. And so what advice do you then give to up-and-coming authors about what path they should take?
In terms of whether they should be self-published or go mainstream, or what do you
Or
mean?
just what to look out for in the business. I don't think self-publishing is as taboo as it was. I think 10 years ago.
It's not at all, because it's so easy to do. I think people should do their research. I think a lot of people, there's a couple of things that people do. Either they just go kind of out there haphazardly, not having read anything or talked to anyone. Or people will send, I can't tell you the number of emails that people send to me saying, Victoria, tell me exactly what to do for me to be successful. And I'm thinking, really? I mean, if you wanted to be a teacher, do you call a teacher up and say, give me 4 years of college in an email or a Facebook message? Really?
Right.
I think it's really, there's so much information available on the art, the craft side, as well as the marketing side. I read, to this day, at least once a day, I read something about marketing my book. Whether it's an email I will get or I'll search it out, I want to know everything I can about marketing, because nobody knows the secret to marketing yet. Nobody knows what totally makes a bestseller and what doesn't. If I did, I would be selling millions of books all the time. But this is what I do know, that you are your best advertisement, and you have to do something every day towards your business. I always tell people who are aspiring to become writers, and a lot of people talk to me about wanting to do it full time. Well, then stop treating it like a hobby and start giving it the respect of a full-time gig. And so that means you would do something. If it was full-time, you would do something every day. You would take one step closer to your goal. And I think the best thing you could do is educate yourself. Now, you said there's a lot of scams out there, and that is true, especially when it comes to the art side of the business. Not well, the marketing side too, but the art business, and all these people who tell you that they are editors. And really all they know what to do is to put a comma someplace.
Yeah.
very few people know how to edit. Very few people. And I love editing, but very few people know how to edit because they just put in a comma showing you that you spelled the word wrong. They're not helping you with the developmental part of the story. And so ask people, who have they edited? And even speak to those people. I am always so willing to give people my my references on who I've worked with. Because I think everybody's pretty happy after that. And then on the other side of the business, there's all of these people out there that say $25 for this, and I'll send an email blast to 180,000 people. And it's so hard. Talk to authors who are doing it and see who they're using. I think that's the best thing to do.
So let's start from the very beginning, because I do want to kind of cover this, and some of the things that I know that people have said that they want us to talk about is writing processes, how to develop characters. We're going to talk a little bit more about how much money you think you should invest in a book, whether or not you should get an agent, and then my favorite topic, the importance of editing. I think editing is huge, and I want to definitely talk more about that with you in the process, since you do have a passion for editing. I don't know anybody that has a passion for being edited, but
but I try to make it easy, right? I try to make it smooth and easy.
No, you do a great job. I just think that but it's such a learning experience. I don't think that you could ever walk away and say, okay, I'm not a better writer because of an editing process. But I think that some people do it with a little bit, like you said, more understanding, as opposed to just moving a comma, putting a period, and correcting spelling. And I think we need to be very clear that there are different type of editors.
Yes.
Editors just are line editors, and they're just supposed to go through and make sure everything's where it's supposed to.
That's right.
But then also developmental editing is very big too. So let's talk about writing processes. What is your writing process?
Well, if my editor is watching, if she's one of the 1,000 people, my writing process is I get up every day at 9 o'clock and I write all day long until 6 o'clock at night. Thank you very much. That's what I like my writing process to be. I am writing full-time since 1997. And so I do treat it like a job, and I do write every day, pretty much 7 days a week. But some days I'm more productive than other days. So I know that there are some writers, like Jacqueline Thomas used to get up from 9 and work from 9 to 12, take a lunch break, and work from 1 to 5. There's so many other things going on in my life with Brown Girls Publishing, with doing editing projects, because I just love editing other people, with writing my own books, with marketing, because marketing can take an entire day, and I'm in the marketing phase of my career right now, because my new book comes out like 3 weeks from yesterday or something. And so I do write every single day. How much I write, it depends on the day. And I tend to be a slow writer. There are some writers who can write 10,000 words in a weekend. If I can get 10,000 words in a week, that is a great thing for me. That is amazing for me. And I'm not able to do that all the time. So I think here's the thing about the writing process. Every author has their own, so don't try to copy somebody else's. And here's something else that's interesting about the writing process. Every book that you write, you will write differently. I wrote my first book, Temptation, because I didn't know better. I just wrote chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4. I've never written another book like that since then, because now I wrote Joy the way a movie is shot. I wrote it based on the scenes that I saw, and then I put it together. The book that I just wrote now, Forever Next, that's coming out, has 3 women in it, and I wrote each story individually before I put it together, with everything laid out on the floor. I got that tip from Eric Jerome Dickey one time. So the thing is that writing is an art, not a science. And so sometimes I think new writers or aspiring writers get a little nervous, and they try to do the science. Okay, I need to do this, 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 and this. And it's not always like that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think for me, the only thing that I do the same every time is I always have a title. I don't care if it's a blog. I don't care if it's a book. I have a title first. That's it.
I don't have a title till the book is almost going to print. This new
I know. I was asking.
2015. The publisher came up with the title.
That is
hilarious. Come up with the title.
No, I have to have a title, but that's it. I think the only thing that I recognize is the fact that I have to, I just have to be true to myself. I can't force myself to do anything. So if I'm in a rewriting mood, then I'm just rewriting. I'm not trying to create anything new. If I'm in just a creative mode and I just want to get stuff on paper and see what flashes, I just have to respect that. I can't say, okay, well, today I'm going to just write new stuff from 8 to 5. I'm in a marketing mood. It just depends.
Yeah.
But I think we all try to force ourselves to be like other people because we think because they're a best-selling author, they've done it right, we need to do what they've done. I don't
Find your own process. But here's what I do tell people. Writing and editing are 2 different processes.
Mm-hmm.
So do not try to be writing and then you go back and you do editing at the same time. Those are 2 different arts. And so I don't do editing while I'm doing writing. I write. That's a creative thing. Editing is not a creative thing. And if you're writing and then you feel like you have to go back and edit, you take yourself out of the writing process. You take yourself away from the creative process. And I think that's what happens to people sometimes. They say they find themselves stuck, and they're stuck because they were in a writing groove, they were in a creative groove, and then they decided to go back over chapter 1 15 times, and they move themselves out of the creative groove. And so I stay in that creative groove until the book is done, and then I go into the editing process.
Very good. We got a question from Denise Nicole Moss, and I think you kind of answered this. Maybe there's a different story, but she wants to know whether or not you've ever been rejected.
Rejected from?
She just said rejected. Have you ever been rejected from a publisher? Have you ever been rejected from
I probably have the record for being rejected. Well, it was interesting. I found an agent. Once, after I was self-published, decided I didn't want to be self-published anymore, I got an agent. I found my agent right away. I sent it out. My best friend and I, who's also a writer, Lolita Files, we went into a bookstore We looked in the acknowledgement sections of all the Black books, and we wrote, because everybody acknowledges God, their mama, and their agent, and we wrote down all of the agents, picked out the top 4, and we sent my self-published book to the top 4. And the next day, I was watching Oprah, and the phone rang, and I almost didn't answer. And I picked up the phone, and she said it was Denise Stinson, who was one of the biggest
Yes.
agents. And so I was like, oh, hello. I mean, I was like going crazy. And she said she had read the first 50 pages, wanted to know a little about me, and she was going to read it over the weekend. Then that Sunday, it was Super Bowl Sunday, and that was when we had dial-up. So if you were on the internet and the phone rang, it disconnected you from the internet. So the phone rang, and I was pissed. And it was Victoria Saunders, another big New York agent.
Big agent, yeah.
And so I chose to go with Denise Stinson, and that was in 1997. And she said when she read Temptation that it was one of the best books she ever read from a new author. She said, we are going to make a lot of money on this. 2 years later, I still didn't have a book deal with the biggest agent, one of the biggest agents in New York. And that's because in 2 years, I was rejected from every single major publishing house in New York, in Chicago, in Germany, all over the world. I was just rejected by everybody. And then it was so interesting because it really is about God's timing. It's just that 2 years later, the first publisher who rejected us, Time Warner, circled back around and said, you know what, is she still available? And so I was rejected from every major publisher. And now every single major publisher knows my name.
All right, so let me ask, because I know we're going to get this, so I'm going to just go ahead and ask it for everybody now. How did you maintain, I guess, your will to keep writing, getting that?
Yeah, that's a good question. It was such an interesting thing because of what I was writing, and publishers were turning me down because they were like, that's too Christian for us. And then the Christian publisher was saying, she got sex in those books. We don't want no sex in no Christian books. And they were like, people take their clothes off and kiss. But you know what was interesting? All along the way, it took Denise 2 years to sell a book. But every 3 or 4 months, there was a glimmer of hope. Somebody would say, oh, we're going to do it. And then they said no. Then I remember Janet Hill got so close in Doubleday, and then they said no. And I just had enough glimmer, but it wasn't easy for me. And the thing is, I had already sold my business. My husband and I had sold my business, so I was still doing my self-publishing and still going out there and still writing the second book, because I wasn't going to allow somebody validating me. I wasn't going to allow a publisher to validate my purpose. I wasn't going to allow them to be the ones to validate that this was what I was supposed to do. I was supposed to do it. I was just going to stick to it, and it was really hard. And if it wasn't for my husband, I probably wouldn't have been able to, because he's like, this is what you're supposed to be doing. So everybody needs like that one champion there to, but I can't say that every day was a day at the beach for me. It was hard. I just knew, Nikki, I knew I was supposed to be doing this. I knew it.
That's awesome. So we have some more questions coming in, but I'm going to try to keep us on topic because we have a lot to get through. So let's talk about the development of characters and how important that is. That was one of our early questions, and I definitely want to talk about this with you because this is one of the things I learned with you in the editing process, because I think sometimes we can stray from what our intended character is supposed to be because we get caught up in the story, and sometimes we forget what we wrote on page 1 because we're on page 258.
Yeah.
So tell me about the development of characters and what you suggest authors do when it comes to that.
Well, there's 2 types of stories. You can either have a plot-driven story or a character-driven story. And plot-driven stories are more the commercial things that the authors don't really care. They're just telling the story. The characters they could do something on page 12 and then on page 256 is something totally different. It's the plot that drives the story. character-driven stories are considered more literary writing. And literary writers don't make as much money, but what I wanted to be was a commercial writer that had a higher standard, so character-driven. So I really did. That's what I wanted to sell a lot of books, but I wanted it to be character-driven, where people love my characters, cannot get enough of my characters. And so the first thing I do is I come up with the idea for the book. That's the first thing I do. Then, so I say, what if you have a woman who wants to marry a preacher and then she gets pregnant by somebody else? That's the book. Then I develop characters to tell that story. So then I say, who's going to tell the story? And so I'm going to need, obviously, a woman who's going to marry the preacher, etc. Then I take those main characters and I do a character resume. And Terry McMillan was the first one that told me to do a character resume. And I got the first character resume from McDonald's. She said, fill out a McDonald's resume or job application. She said, because they ask more questions than anybody else. Since that time, I have developed my own character resume that I send to people if they ever want it. And I fill out things that never even appear in the story. So I know what kind of food they like, if they eat ice cream, what they watch on television, their favorite color. I know all of that because that's what gives you a multi-dimensional character. And then when I know those people, that's why it takes me so long to write. You have to know your people before you can write the story.
Absolutely.
So
and
I spend time with them.
And I think people think I'm crazy sometimes because, you have to be so many different people and you have to understand a lot of different kinds of people. And that's why it's so much easier for me to write character, the one character's driven plots or scenes and then go to another one as it is to write multiple, because then I confuse myself about who I'm supposed to be.
And then people need to look at their characters as real people.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is think about how they speak. And don't forget all of who they are. Do they use gestures? Or do they just sit there and smile all the time? He smiled. She smiled. They've got to do more than that, And when they smile, do they do something else? Or do they kind of dance when they talk? Or and then a person who's a musician is going to act very differently than a person who's a doctor. Right. And it's going to act very differently than a person who's a school teacher. A person who is 16 speaks different than a person who's 60, who's different than a person who's 35. And I don't think we pay enough attention to those kinds of details. I want you to be able to tell who my characters are. I don't want to have to say he said, she said. By the way a person is talking, by the dialogue I've delivered, you should almost know who the character is if I've developed the character well. So develop everything. We tend to forget them past their physical description, but get into their heart. Who is this character? What do they think? And when they think a certain way, they behave a certain way. Do they love people? Do they have sisters and brothers? Are they estranged from their parents? All kinds of things. And the biggest thing that I find with new writers is that all the characters start acting the same way. In the book. Their motivations are the same thing. Everybody has different motivations. Why are people doing it?
All right, and so I'm going to ask the next question that we're about to get in the Facebook group. And yes, I'm going to have Victoria give us a copy of her character resume. Yes. And I'm going to send it out to everybody with her permission.
Yes.
That was a part of this webinar so that they have that as well. Because I know we have a lot of authors and people who have written books and people who want to write books. So that's good. And we're getting a lot of questions, but I still want to ask a few more of my own, which is my right, before we get to that. So we talked about characters. We talked about the writing process. You talked about whether or not, do you still believe that everybody should have an agent?
No, you only need an agent if you're going to go with a mainstream publisher. And it's so funny because with Brown Girls Publishing, we take people without agents. We have some authors who came to us through agents, but we take people without agents. But now I understand why they only take it with agents. Because the agents are the ones who go through all the manuscripts for you. We got 300 manuscripts in the first 2 weeks. And we have to go through all of those. So if you want to be with a major publisher like Simon & Schuster, Doubleday, any of those, you need an agent. Even though I think that's kind of fading out. I think so many people are doing their own thing or going to smaller publishers like Brown Girls Publishing, and I know Paul Weber has a publishing house, and some other people, because you can get a lot more attention from those publishers. You can call them up. You can call them up and say, can you do a webinar with me? You know, you can do that kind of thing.
Well, I have to say, because I have to. She's one of my favorite people, Lisa Woodson, and you and Roshonda. And I think the one thing that I like about most of the people that I've met, because I can't say this for all, but most of the people that I've met is that they are authors and they are writers and they do know the process and they do know what we all have to go through in order to get something out. So I think there's a little bit more understanding, because we can be a little quirky and we can be a little we can be a little defensive when it comes to our baby.
On Facebook the other day, I said, I now know what my publisher thinks about me.
Yeah, so I think there's a little bit more understanding, and I've always recommended that people, at least with the first book, at least talk to an agent, because I think an agent has a lot of insight on the business of publishing. But
that's a good point.
But also how it is to market a book, and a lot of us don't. I have a family, I have a full-time job, and even though I know a lot about the writing process and what it's been for me, I don't know a lot about the publishing business. So for me, it was really important that I have kind of a buffer to help even out my mistakes, and to help me, to translate to a publisher.
Yeah.
So that's always been my advice, at least with the first book.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we're very happy to have you, but that's a whole different webinar. But we're so happy to have you because you are an amazing wrter, and I told you that.
Yes,
I told you that.
Yes, you did, and I appreciate that.
I told her, Prashonda, and said, "Girl, at the end of your book, I went, oh, and I never do that."
Oh, that's really sweet. Okay, so let's talk about one of my favorite things, because I really want to I do want to open it up because people are starting to kind of chomp at the bit. But let's talk about the importance of editing, because one of the things that I thought really was interesting is Easier Said Than Done, which is my novel that Brown Girls Publishing has released for me again, has been through like almost 5 edits, I believe, not counting my mama, who actually read the book backwards to try to catch everything the editors didn't miss. And there were still things that you were able to see and improve upon, and there were things that you told me, like, that I used every adverb and adjective in the book.
Every adverb in the English language, and then you made up some, was in your book.
So, but to me, that was like flowery language. But after you removed it, I was able to see that you can still construct a really beautiful sentence without using all of that.
The road to hell is paved with adverbs. I wish that was my statement. That is Stephen King's statement. Because you write so beautifully and so flowery, and so you don't need to say, she skipped down the road happily. Because the fact that she's skipping down the road with a huge smile, I kind of get that she's doing it happily. So, yeah, I just love editing. There are really 2 kinds of editors, and what they're called, one's a copy editor, and those are the people that tell you where the commas go.
So wait, is that the same as a line editor then, Victoria?
No, actually a line editor, story editor, developmental editor, you can use interchangeably.
Okay.
So, and so most of them at the publishing houses, they call them line editors because they're going to do it line by line to make sure things are, we check for continuity, story development. I check for character motivation. Why is the character doing it? Or I will tell somebody, it doesn't make sense that this character is doing this, not the way you set it up. Or where was this character? Where did the character disappear to for 2 months? Or this character sounds just like that character. That's what a developmental story line. I hate the fact that there are too many words for it because then people get them mixed up. But that's the person that helps you develop the story. And I think that is so much more important than where the commas should be. And the challenge is that when people hear editor, they give it to Pookie, because Pookie got a B in English in the 10th grade, and they kind of figure Pookie could do it for them. And that's the challenge with somebody who just loves you. They're never going to tell you what could be done better, and they may not know. The fact that I love you, if I take your editing project, I love you. I want the best product out there. And I will do everything to make sure that we're checking to make sure I'm taking out those adverbs. I am making sure that the characters really, does it make sense that they're doing this in this part of the story, then they do this in that part of the story. What happened to that? I look for the continuity. I look for, if she just got to Jamaica, how long has she been there? That sentence, doesn't make, I don't know how long she's been there. Those kinds of things that make the story solid.
Yeah, because I was surprised because there was a discrepancy in years with mine. And so I think by the 6th discrepancy in the little editing section was like, I got it. I got that there's this discrepancy.
But I wasn't going to let you miss any of them.
No, you weren't. But I just thought it was phenomenal that you caught that after like 4 other people. And totally
if I didn't highlight every single one,
yes,
there would have been one that you could have missed. I wasn't letting you miss them. And I know that I just did an editing project for another young lady who I think is phenomenal. And all her characters just smiled. They just smiled all the time. They were just one happy world. They just all smiling. And so she had written something. She smiled for the first time, and I wrote, no, she didn't. She was smiling on every page from page 1 to page 196. She smiled. So she said that she busted out laughing when she saw that. But I like to have fun with editing, but I just think editing is what makes or break a book. Here's the thing. You can't always sell your book. And what I mean by that is you're not always there to sell it. So somebody has to read it, and then if they like it, they will sell it for you. Readers have big mouths. Readers really do. And readers love to talk about great books. We love to talk about great books. I read about 50 books a year, and if a book is good, I just can't stop talking about it. And I'm still talking about easier said than done. And I don't talk about every book, even though every Brown Girls book is excellent, because those are the only books that we're going to publish. But I just think easier said than done is at the top of the game. And when people read that book, they're going to tell other people about it. That's why editing is so important. Because if you don't edit your book, if you don't have somebody to go through your book and to help you with it, then people are not going to want to read anything else you ever write.
And that's what I tell people too, because when they see the prices of some editors, they're kind of like, really? And I'm like, yeah, really, because this.
Yeah, I charge a lot.
Yeah, as you should.
Unless you're a part of Brown Girls, I charge quite a bit of money.
As you should, because I tell people that once people start seeing all these mistakes, and I mean, every book I think probably has a couple that.
Yeah, because we're human.
Yeah, because we're human. But when you start seeing all of these first grade grammatical errors, because like you said, you got your neighbor down the street or somebody in your literature class that's getting the A, to do it, then they may never come back to you.
I would never. There's too many other authors. I won't come back. And I'll tell other people, don't go back. No, I don't do that. But I won't be out there people have asked me for a review, because if I do post a book on Facebook, people will go and read it. I'm blessed with that. But if somebody's book has that, I won't. I won't, because if you didn't spend time, if you didn't care about your book, why do you want me to spend the money to care about your book? Right. So I think editing is the most important thing you can do. And if you don't have money to edit, don't publish your book. Wait until you get the money to edit.
So let's talk about the final point before we open it up for questions so people can get all of their concerns answered as well. One of the big things people always ask is how much should you invest in your book? Whether because you're going to invest anyway, whether you're self-publishing or whether you're going to go with a boutique publisher or even a mainstream publisher. What do you advise people on the monetary amount?
Well, let's talk about, there's two parts to that. That's actually getting a book to market, and then there's the marketing side.
Right. So let's talk about the beginning part of it.
Yeah, so let's getting the book to market. Here are the things that you're going to have to do after you write it. You're going to have to pay a professional editor, find out who else they've edited, and look at even their stories if they're authors. And not all authors can be editors, and not all editors can be authors. Then you have to have it professionally formatted because it has to go a certain way, even if you're going to only put it on Kindle. So you have to find people who can do those kinds of things. Then I think one of the most important things that you have is your cover, because your cover can sell your book when you're not there. And so you have to invest in a cover, and in a good cover. And I'm the person at Brown Girls Publishing who'll say, I don't like that cover. We need a new cover. That book is so good. I'll be honest here. The first cover with yours, I didn't like it before I read the book. After I read your book, I was like, oh no. We're getting a good cover for this young
Okay,
lady.
well, let me tell you the story of the first cover, because I think that I got that a lot, and Lisa Woodson will tell you that I gave a lot of pushback about that cover.
I know.
But that cover was really my grandmother's house in Jamaica, so it was really very personal for me. Which this is a business, and so sometimes you can't go with
Oh,
personal.
I didn't know. I'm so glad I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, I know, but you guys were absolutely right. I mean, it was very personal for me. And so everybody told me the exact same thing. This is not going to connect with who you're trying to connect with. This is not what's going to sell this book, because people are going to look at it. They're not going to get it.
Yeah,
so
I didn't know.
Personal.
I'm so glad I didn't know that.
Because you talk bad about my cover.
Because I would have been, because that's what they kept saying. They kept saying she loves that cover. I'm like, let me speak to her.
Yeah.
No. I said, I read this book. I read this book. I'm not letting that go out with that cover. So, I'm so glad I didn't know that. But it's a business. And so your cover has to sell your book when you're not there. And so there are some good graphic designers out there, but you're going to pay $500 to $1,000 for a really good graphic designer to design your book. And then in today's times, if you're going to do self-publishing, that's about it, because then you can put it up on Kindle and through Barnes and Noble. You can go through Create Space to actually get the actual book. So you can go through Lightning Source, so you don't have to do that. So that's about it for that side. Then there's the marketing side, because a lot of people think, okay, I have a book now, I'm going to put on the shelf and it's just going to fly off the shelves because it's so good. Well, with over 1 million books being printed every year, right, 1 million new books coming out, you've got to do something to make your book stand out. And here's the thing, it costs a lot of money to go around the country to be everywhere. And what I tell people, if you have, this is going to be on you and how much money you have. If you have $5,000 or $1,000, whatever you have, there's two things I tell people. One is become famous where you live first. And what I mean by that is that if you have $5,000 to spend, don't try to spend it all across the country. Don't try to spend some of that on a plane fare to Chicago, on a plane trip to Boston. If you live in Houston, spend that $5,000 in Houston and any place where you can drive to. Because if you become famous where you live first, I guarantee you could sell 10,000 books. You can sell 10,000 books, which is an incredible start in today's time.
Right.
And then those people, and then you'll get the money, and those people will tell other people and tell other people and tell other people. Another thing that you should do is co-op with other authors. And this is something I've been preaching for a long time, and I'm so glad we're doing it at Brown Girls Publishing, especially when you're around near authors that you live near, or things like that. Co-op with them. And what I mean by that is that if you want to take out an ad someplace, do it with 4 other authors. I always had wanted to do something. I lived part of the time in D.C., and so I had wanted to get together with 3 authors and do something called the DMV's own, one author from Virginia, one author from DC, one author from Maryland, and we would go around together, just tour together in this area. Radio stations would want to speak to us, all kinds of things. Just co-op with people who live near you and become famous where you live first. You shouldn't be able to walk down the street your city.
All right. Well, and that's very good advice, and I think that you're absolutely right. I mean, I think that most people assume that a lot of times that this journey is glamorous,
Ooh,
and not so
child.
much.
I've been doing it since 1997, and I haven't found the glamour part of it at all.
Yeah, it's definitely a grind, but if it's your baby, and you definitely want everybody to see her and love her and appreciate her, and so you do it. So, two quick questions that came up while we're talking about this. One was, what do you think of Create Space? So, what do you think of that? And then also, I want to talk about digital now versus hard copy. So, what do you think of Create Space?
Oh, I like it. I love the idea. I know there's another company called Lightning Source, but I like it because then you're not. When I self-published, my husband and I spent $50,000 to sell 9,000 books. It was a $50,000 investment, and we made back 30,000 in selling the book. And so we had to print the books ourselves, put them in the garage, hope this, that, and it was crazy. I love it. I know a lot of people don't like it, and I don't know why they don't like it, but I like it.
Okay, and then so I know you and I had a conversation about digital versus hard copy. So what do you like, or what is selling? What do people now seem to prefer as readers?
Well, it used to be it had gotten as high as 50-50, digital versus paperback. And it was a digital thing that was starting to put all the authors out of business and all of the publishers out of business and bookstores. But it's interesting. Digital is kind of coming down. I think a lot of people are saying, you know what, I really did like that digital thing for a moment, but it's not going to disappear, ever.
Yeah.
Because there are kids that will never even watch television anymore. They're watching everything on their iPads. So it's never going to disappear. You're going to get more. But now it's about 30-40% of people are do reading digitally versus reading the actual book. It really is a personal preference. If you're going to do it, you have to do both. I know people that have just the actual book, and you're throwing away too many people.
Yeah, I used to think that I would never ever be a digital reader. I wanted to hold it. I wanted to see the cover whenever I wanted. I wanted all of that. But then, just with traveling alone, it's so much more convenient to have 52 books on an iPad.
I've had a Kindle since 2007 because I was, never going to do that digital thing ever, because I'm a book snob and I'm way too. And I was talking to Stephen Barnes, and he said, well, what about for like nonfiction books? While you're traveling, you can have all your writing books with you. I was like, oh, that's a good idea. And so I got the Kindle and pulled it out the box, and it was just so intuitive. And I remember I was reading Eric Jerome Dickey's Pleasure. I had paid $26 for that hardback book. I was in the middle of
big hardback book.
I know. And it was Pleasure. It was a big one. And I said, oh, no, I'm not buying the digital. I paid $26. I was in the middle of it. And I was on the elliptical machine trying to hold it open and everything. And I read 2 more pages, then bought it on digital. And I've been reading digitally ever since.
All right. I agree. I mean, there's still some books I definitely have to have hardcover, but I'm a digital girl too. So tell me what books, another question that we got, and Valencia, I see your question, we'll get to that too, but what books do you recommend authors or writers read about writing?
Okay, now, and this is just interesting. I say that if you want to be a good writer, you better be a great reader, because reading will help motivate you, it'll teach you, everything. In terms of the craft of writing, Stephen King's book on writing will always be my all-time favorite. I read it often because he says, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. I love the way that whole book is crafted. The first part tells his story and how he became this big author. Yep. The second part is all the things not to do, and he's the one that says the road to hell is paved with adverbs. So.
I missed that part, but I did read this book. I said I missed that part.
Yeah, so it's really good. But then there's a couple of books that I tell people when you're trying to learn different things. Here are some good books. And I won't start with you, but one of the things I like about setting, where a story takes place, is if a person can feel like they're in the middle of New York City when you're writing about New York City, or For example, Eric Jerome Dickey, any of his Gideon books, you will feel like you're in South America. People should read those books by Eric Jerome Dickey to get an idea on how to use settings and make settings as a character. And then people will be talking about your book. Rashonda Tate Billingsley's book, I Know I've Been Changed. I don't even think she knew that she did this. The setting of the South, you felt like you could almost smell the city as she was describing it. Those are two authors who I think use settings very well. If you want to, one of the things that I don't like about some of us as writers and readers is that the drama got to be right on the first page, or else I'm not going to stick with it. I think the beauty of writing is letting a story unfold and just becoming engaged with the characters and the whole story. And Nikki, I'm not saying this because you're here. You can ask other people that I've been editing, but easier said than done is now the book that I tell people to read for beautiful writing, for just beautiful writing of descriptions and how a story unfolds step by step, slowly exposing itself. That's what you want in a story. And so people need to read that to see how to do that. If you want to learn about point of view and how to write books, oh my God, what's her name? Oh, I can't believe I can't remember. It's the book about the Atlanta child murders.
Oh,
and I can't believe it. I always use it.
And I love her.
I know her too. And she wrote the first story in the first character in first person, the second character in second person.
She was a professor in Georgia.
It was in Georgia. Oh my God, I can't think of her name. I can't believe I'm drawing a blank. That book is amazing.
Shortly.
We'll send it out also with the
character
resume. But she wrote the first character in first person, the second character in second person, and I had never seen it written that way. And then she wrote the third character in third person. That will teach you the different voices of how to do that. And so those are books that I really recommend on learning those different things, because the things that people have a problem with is using settings beautifully, how to let a story unfold, and then how to use first person, second person, and third person.
Right. Okay, very good. We're going to get to Brown Girls Publishing because we have a lot of questions about what you guys are looking for in your authors, but we have another question about writing partners. Now, I know you've done a lot of writing with Rashonda Tate Billingsley and now also starting this company with her. What are some of the pros and cons of having a writing partner?
There is not one con with Rashonda. Seriously, it's like a writing marriage, and God just put equally yoked people together. Had no clue it was going to be like this. She is the yin to my yang, and we are so much alike, but just totally differently enough to come together, even when we're writing our stories. Not one con with her, and I'm not just saying that. I love being with her. I love traveling with her. When we write our stories, I write a chapter, send it to her. She writes a chapter, sends it back, and then I have to respond to it. We almost run the business that same way with Brown Girls Publishing. I'm blessed. My father always said this, that there's very few people who are equally left brain and right brain. So when I have to write, I can be creative. When I have to edit, I can be creative. But I know how to run a business. I have my MBA. I know how to run a business. And so I'm the business person here. And she does all of the marketing, and she works with the authors and all of that kind of stuff. So I think, though, that everybody's not going to have it. When Rashonda and I first started, we saw all of these partnerships pop up, and most of those people are not even speaking to each other anymore.
Yeah, and I was going to say, because I have a writing partner, too, and I think that it is definitely a fine thing, just finding that balance and finding somebody that you trust, not only with writing a comparable story, but writing for you. I mean, I would just as easily publish what she writes as what I write. I mean, but finding that right person. It's like you said, it's like a marriage.
It's like a marriage. Like a marriage, so you better find the right person. And it's not just for marketing things. You got to find the right person.
All right, so we got about 5 minutes left of just pure wisdom. You have been phenomenal, Victoria. So we're getting a lot of questions about what Brown Girls Publishing is looking for in authors. What do you guys have coming up? I want to definitely talk about some of the authors that you guys have on board because there's so many talented people. So let's talk about that. What is Brown Girls Publishing about, and what are you all looking for?
You know, we wanted to be different. There were, you know, we noticed that with all of these great authors were not getting new contracts, and then people like you were not being published. And so we wanted to have a publishing company that would be the best in books. I don't want people to forget that we have good books. Sometimes people just look at us as publishers and they forget to read the books because we have great books out here. We were looking for, I want every time somebody picks up a Brown Girls Publishing book, I want them to say, I know that book is going to be good. The only reason a person will not like a Brown Girls Publishing book is they don't like that genre. It's not going to be because it wasn't well written, because we have all genres. We want everything from romance to science fiction. We have Black writers, we have white writers, we have men, we have women. But every book is so well written. I'm so proud of that. And that's what we're going to keep. And so do they all come to us that way? No. The story, we know that the stories are, now you were almost there. You were almost there, Nikki. So, but we did work. Every adverb in the English language was in your book. But we work with you. If it's a good story, we will work with you. And I'm just going to say it. I don't ever brag. You can ask Rashonda because she says that I never say anything good about myself. But I'm one of the best editors in the business. And so I work on all of these books. I work on every book. So until it is something that Rashonda and I can say Victoria Christopher Murray and Rashonda Tate Billingsley presents. And when we can say that, then that book comes out. We're doing right now fiction and nonfiction. We're not doing children, though we're going to come out with a line called Little Brown Girls because we want to feature some young writers. And then we have some really big, exciting news coming very, very soon.
I know.
I think we sign the papers tomorrow, and then we'll be able to tell, Nikki.
Okay, good. So we'll definitely keep everybody posted. So tell me about some of the authors and what the differences and the nuances that they bring to the table, because you do have a talented crew.
Isn't that great? I mean, well, we started with Lisa Woodson and Dwayne Joseph, both who had been writers before, both who were totally different writers. Lisa knows how to bring the drama, over-the-top drama with an aunt who's in love with her niece's fiance. Really good story. And Lisa is, she needs to be everybody's publicist. She could be President Obama's publicist. She just works very hard on the marketing side of the business.
Absolutely.
She can write, but I don't know another author. She makes me tired. I want to know what's in her Kool-Aid. Dwayne is way laid back, but I just wish people would give him a chance and read his book. He's a young James Patterson and better. Very well written. The mystery book is off the chain. We had you, and I had met you years ago, and Lisa said, Victoria, Rashonda, you should talk to Nikki because she published and didn't have a good experience. I was like, you think she'd be interested in us? And then we called you, and
2 seconds later.
And so we're just thrilled to have you. We have Ronnie Tees on, a non-brown girl. She's a stage 4 breast cancer survivor, a woman I've actually known for over 30 years. And when we got the news, we didn't think she was going to make it because she didn't find out she had breast cancer till stage 4. And she's written a really interesting romance suspense story called Twist. I really want her to write her story because what she survived and she's thriving. And then we have Candy Jackson, who's always wanted to be a writer. She used to read a book a day. She wrote a book called Pink and Patent Leather, about a woman who's heard the voice of God, and the God has told her to steal some lady's husband. When this woman really believes she's heard the voice of God, so it's just a nice, diverse group. I'm just so proud. We just did the Motherhood Diaries too, and I like that because one of the things we're doing, I think you saw today, we were talking, is that we're trying to do an anthology now. One of the things we saw in the Motherhood Diaries is that there are some people, Nikki, who are not where you are. They're not ready to write a full novel, but they can write short things and things that might give them enough confidence to build up to that novel. And so Rashonda and I decided today that we were going to give new authors another chance through an anthology. And so the information is on Rashonda's Facebook page. So go to her for that.
But you can also log on to browngirlspublishing.com. And you can learn about all the authors because there are a slew of them that we haven't gotten a chance to mention. But I am slowly working my way through the catalog because I'm honored to be included in such a group. So, and I appreciate you just for taking the time to do this and for what you and Rashonda have done for us, standing in the gap for authors that may not, be with a mainstream publisher but still have a voice and really still have something to share with a large group of people. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I just want to tell people, don't give up. When you first start writing, and if you can't get a book deal, and if the numbers don't look good, you sell your book one book at a time. And I always tell people, Eric Jerome Dickey told me this. You sell your first book. You write your first book to write it. You write your second book to sell your first book because people don't know anything about you. And then you write your third book to be known. Because then you have a catalog of books that people can then go back and then people start talking. But very few people start talking when you only have one book. So you write your first book because you have to just write it. You write your second book to sell your first book. You write your third book to be known. You have a catalog now. And so just be patient with that process. It may not happen with the first book. It may not happen with the second book. But if you keep going, it's going to happen.
Well, we are going to keep going. And I can't wait for the big announcement. I am very proud of what you guys have accomplished, and it's just going to get better from here. So
I know. This is huge, isn't it?
Yeah, it is huge. It is huge. So thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you for thinking of me for this. This was wonderful.
No, and I knew you'd be perfect. And next time we're going to get Rashonda, and then we're going to have to pull Lisa in to talk about marketing for authors. So
you need to, because Lisa's off the chain.
Yeah, Lisa is off the chain. She's one of the best things that I think has happened to me in my literary career. So I appreciate all of you and the whole team at Brown Girls Publishing. You guys do an outstanding job for all of us. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you. Thank you for being, and thank you for having me here. So I hope I helped with everybody who's
I think you did. I'm going to go dive into the Facebook page now. I'm going to say goodbye to you, and then I'm going to go answer some questions.
Okay.
And we're going to just have some fun. But I just really want to thank you, and I just let you know I appreciate you.
Thanks, Nikki, and I'll get that resume to you. Tell me how you want me to get it to you, okay?
Okay, will do.
Okay.
Bye, Victoria. Bye. And thank you for joining us for another edition of the Grow Global Pen to Publisher webinar. See if she figures her thing out. We will talk to Victoria a little bit later. I'm coming to the Facebook page to answer any more questions. And, of course, the replay will be coming out. So if you all have anything else you'd like to ask me a little bit later, we will take care of it. So know that I appreciate you guys for always hanging out and always supporting browngirlspublishing.com. That's where you can get more information about my novel, Easier Said Than Done, but also about all the other authors and about becoming an author if that's indeed what you want to do. So take care and have a good night. We'll see you on the replay.